here, I want you to kind of label this on your lined piece of paper as 9.1 mini assessment. Okay, this is back from the very first section we did, right, on squares and square roots. Okay, so this has 5 questions up here. The top one, and then directions to these down here. Okay, so I want you to take some time and do these. We're going to go over them together and see how you did. And then we have one that we're going to do after this, which is 9.2. So we're going to do 2 little mini assessments. And what this is going to do is kind of help prepare you for the quiz. Because a week from this coming Friday is the first quiz on the first half of this section, 9.1, 9.2, and 9.3. We start 9.3 tomorrow. All right. So I want you to take your time and work on these 5 things. Okay. And then once everyone's finished, we'll go over them together. You can make any adjustments. And then we'll put 9.2 up on the board and have you work on that. Okay. And then we'll get in what we're doing today. All right. So I'm going to pause. All right, so for number 1, it says find the 2 square roots of 169. So what are the 2 square roots of 169? Jacob? Yeah, 13 and negative 13, right? So you could have wrote it this way, or you could have wrote it this way. Same thing, okay? Because 13 times 13 is 169, and so is negative 13 times negative 13. Now, number 2, the square root of 225. Peter? Right, just 15. Because remember, when they don't signify out in front of the square root, it's just the positive root. And that is 15. Very good. What about number 3? Plus or minus the square root of 4.41. Jaden? Not just positive. Yeah, so you can do the plus or minus 2.1. Or you can just write them out separately. Remember, the 2 roots, when they ask you for the plus minus, they're asking you for both. All right, and negative 16/25. Stay away from the decimal. Not 4/5. Tyler. Negative what? Negative 8? Nope. Negative 4/5. Remember, you take the square root of 16, which is 4, the square root of 25, which is 5. It's a fraction. And then take the negative of it, negative 4/5. Okay. All right. The equation, remember, we got to get x squared by itself. So we add 4 to both sides. That cancels out. I'm left with x squared equals 36. And then to get x by itself, we square root both sides. And the square root of 36 is 6. And negative 6. Don't forget that in the equation. In the equation, it's both roots. Because negative 6 squared is also 36. So when you plug that in, you get 36 minus 4 is 32. So both numbers work. You got to have 2 solutions when you're doing these equations. Okay? All right. So this was 9.1. Okay? Everyone with me? All right. Now I'm going to show you 9.2. We're going to have to put this on a little bit. You kind of fit the whole thing. Give me a second here. Even the computers get tired. Okay. So there's 3 triangles you have to find the missing side for. So label this one 9.2 mini assessment. Okay. So at number 1, you're finding C. And number 2, you're finding A. 3, you're finding B, and then 4 and 5, you're finding the distance between these 2 points. And I'm going to show you another way that you can find that, and we'll see which way you like. All right. Let's do, if I do this, see, it's hard to do it this way because you can't see a whole lot at one time. All right, so we're going to work on this. We'll pause the video. Okay. So in the first triangle, we're trying to find the hypotenuse, right? So that's 14 squared plus 48 squared equals c squared. Because remember, opposite the right angle, there's always the hypotenuse. So when you square and add these up, you get 2,500. And when I square root both sides, C equals 50. By the way, real quick, the last one we just did, how many people had all 5 right in the 9-1? By keeping those hands up, what about if you had 4 or more right? 4 or more right. Okay, keeping those hands up, what about 3 or more right? That's pretty much everybody. Okay, good. All right. So 50. 50 was the first one. Now, in the second one, we have to find a leg because this is the hypotenuse, and that's 51. Okay. So remember, 45 squared is 2,025, and 51 squared is 2,601. So I got to subtract 2025 to both sides to get a squared by itself. And when I subtract this, it's what, 576? Square root both sides, and a is 24. All right. And remember, the first one, because it's a hypotenuse, this number had to be the biggest. It's bigger here. It's bigger here. Number 2, 51 has to remain the biggest number, right? Because that's the hypotenuse, and 24 is smaller than 51. All right. Number 3, we had to find another leg. This is B. So 45 is your hypotenuse, opposite the right angle. So 27 squared is 729. And 45 squared, yeah, we did that one already, 2025. So when I subtract 729 to both sides to get b squared by itself, 576. And when I square root both sides, yeah, 1,000. Yeah, the square root of 1,296 is 36. And again, this number must be smaller than the hypotenuse, which it is. Okay. All right. Now, I'm going to kind of start off with a traditional way. Then I'm going to show you something that you may like. Some people, I showed them last hour, and they kind of fell in love with it. Or you may say, I like the other way better. But again, the nice part about some of these math problems, you can do it more than one way. So if we were to graph 0, 4, and 3, 0, and find, so here's 0, 4 is right up here, and 3, 0 is right there. We have to find the length of that line, right? We said draw a right triangle. Whether go this way or it doesn't matter, it's the same thing, right? This distance is 4, and this distance is 3 from point to point, right? So 3 squared plus 4 squared equals c squared, right? 3 squared is 9. 4 squared is 16. When I add them together, it's 25. And when you square root both sides, c equals 5. Now, hold on to your hats. There is a formula that you can use to find the distance between 2 points without having to graph it. Okay? Why are we up and walking around the room? Called the distance formula. I want you to think about when I write this out what it looks like. It looks a little similar. Oops. So x1 minus x2 squared plus y1 minus y2 squared. Look a little familiar? A little bit? Like what? Not the distributive property. Remember we found the slope of 2 points? Y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1? So watch what this says. So to find the distance, I subtract the 2 x's, which is 0 minus 3. and I square that number, plus the two y's, 4 minus 0, and square that number. Well, 0 minus 3 is negative 3, and 4 minus 0 is 4, right? What is negative 3 squared? That's negative 3 times negative 3. 9. What's 4 squared? So 9 plus 16 is 25, and the square root of 25 is 5. Same answer, right? Now, if we do number 5, and I graph these 2 points, again, showing you the way that we kind of first showed you. Negative 3, negative 1 is here, and 5, 5 is all the way up there. Okay, so draw a right triangle. This is 8, and that's 6. Trying to find this side. So 6 squared plus 8 squared. 6 squared is 36. 8 squared is 64. When I add 36 and 64 together, what do I get? 100. Square root both sides, and C is 10. Okay. Now, doing the same thing on the distance formula. Not much different, right? We should get 10 if we do it right, right? So, negative 3 minus 5 squared plus negative 1 minus 5. Oops. Squared. See if you kind of follow. What's negative 3 minus 5? Nope. Nope. Just keep throwing more numbers out. You'll eventually get it. Negative 8. And negative 1 minus 5 is negative 6. What happens when I square negative 8? Negative 8 times negative 8. 64. And negative 6 times negative 6. And I get square root of 100, which is 10. So now, obviously, using the distance formula, you have to kind of remember the distance formula, but that's something that you can do without graphing it. Okay? How many people got all 5 right on this one? Okay, keeping your hands up. What about 4 right or more? 3 right or more? Okay, good. That's pretty much everybody. All right, so these little mini assessments can help you. Now, let's talk about what we're going to do today. I want to show you this. So we're going to do this puzzle time today. And I'm going to show you a neat little calculator trick that you can use for today to help you. Okay? So watch. By the way, there is some mistakes on this sheet. I'll get out of the way now because I forgot to tell first hour. We caught it second and fourth hour. So for number 4, this is not 720. This is 72. Scribble out the 0. Okay? And for number 6, this is right after you do your problems on 9-2. That puzzle time is the next page right after that. So the homework that we checked today, it's the next page. Okay? Number 6, where it says 6 and 2/53, it's supposed to be 6 and 2/3. Cross out the 5. Okay? Now, I want to kind of show you a little calculator shortcut with 1 through 6. We're going to do one problem together, and 7 through 12. Okay? So we know that 1 through 6, you can take a squared plus b squared to find c squared, right? And all those first 6 problems, they give you a and b, right? So I'm going to bring up the calculator. Oops, that's not the calculator. Where is he at? There he is. All right. So watch what I can do here. Number 1, it says A is 15 and B is 20, right? So in your calculator, you can type 15 squared, 1, 5, and hit the squared button. Then hit plus 20 squared. What this is going to do is going to square 15 for you, square 20 for you, and add those 2 numbers together. 625. Now, to just find C, what do we got to do? Take the square root of 625. So hit the second function button, x squared, and hit 625. So the answer for number 1, C, equals 25. Look in the column here on the right-hand side. Okay. What number is 20? What letter is 25? N, right? So down here for number 1, you're going to put an N. Okay. Now, I'm going to show you something really. Now, if you look at 7 through 12, you're finding B, right? So I'm going to kind of do this off to the side. You don't have to write this, but we know that if we're trying to find B, and I get B by, if I just want to get B squared by itself, move the A squared over, right? So I get B squared equals C squared minus A squared. So if I just subtract C squared from A squared, I can figure out what my B is. So watch this. We know that in number 7, C is 61, right? So take 61 squared, and we're going to subtract A from it, A squared. A is 11. So subtract 11 squared. Because that's what we do eventually anyway, right? We find 11 squared and subtract it over. This is going to do the work for you. Watch this. You hit enter. It gives you 3,600. So to find B, just take the square root of it. 60. So for number 7, B is 60. So look on your sheet. What number is 60? It's also N, right? It's right here. So down here for number 7, because we just did number 7, we're going to put another N. So those are 2 little tricks you can do as you work on your puzzle time today. There's 14 problems, and once you find all the correct answers on this, it'll spell out a little phrase which will answer the question, what did one dog say to the other dog? And remember, there's no 0 in 720, and there's no 53 and 2 53rds. It's 2/3 and 72. All right? So for the remainder of the hour, you can work with somebody as long as you are working, and whatever you don't finish is homework. We'll check this tomorrow.